screen here, which is the login screen. Okay, you put in your email address and your password and hit login. Okay. If you are registered on behalf of more than one financial institution, you will be brought to this screen where you indicate which financial institution you wish to act on behalf of. Okay, today we're going to use Nassau Bank. We hit login. Okay, and we'll be taken then to what we call the home screen. Okay, so on the home screen there are some text here kind of advising the general flow of information. So you go to create filing, you use the draft filings menu then to access that and to enter your data into your filing, and then you use the submission menu to validate and submit your files to the competent authority. Okay, and there's also some contact detail here, so information at taxreporting.finance.gov.bs or helpdesk@taxreporting.finance.gov.bs. So if you have any questions or are having any difficulty, you can reach out to either of those contacts and someone should be able to help you. Okay, but the first thing we're going to take a look at is the CRS filing and how, if you only have a small number of accounts for any particular jurisdiction, you can use a manual entry form to key in that information and how you can submit that then to the competent authority. So I have one prepared already, so it's in my draft filings area. So I go menu, draft filings. And we see I have a number of things here, but the one I'm concerned with right now is this here, CRS Germany 2017. So I click on that filing name, okay, here, and that will open up the filing itself, and we'll be able to take a look at the forms that make that up, okay, where you will record your information. So the first section is the general information section. And it's in here that you indicate who the intended recipient country is, okay, so which tax residence you're reporting on behalf of. So in this case, I selected Germany. I said that my message contains new information, okay. The other option here will be corrections, but for the purposes of this demonstration, let's leave it at new information. And we hit validate and save. Okay, this message reference is automatically generated, so you don't need to worry about that. Hit validate and save. And we can move on then to the reporting FI information. Okay, so the next form is where we capture the information relating to the financial institution itself. Okay, and it's worth noting at this point as well that these forms are based on the requirements from the OECD. Okay, so every piece of data that you see on here is on there purposefully in order to ensure compliance with the standards set out by the OECD. Okay, so they have a number of validation rules and kind of structural rules of the file that you must send. And in order to adhere to those, we have crafted these forms accordingly. Okay, so on our form, we see at the top here our document type. In this case, it's new data. And we have a document reference ID. So those of you familiar with FATCA, these terms should be familiar to you. For those of you who aren't, each section of a file has a unique reference, okay, known as a document reference ID, so that when there are any communications or anything like that, both parties know which particular part of any given file that is being referred to. We have the reporting FI name, their identification number, okay, so this is automatically populated and it's the same number that would have been generated on this particular bank's enrollment. you have your reporting FI tax residence, which is the Bahamas, okay, and the address. Okay, once you're happy with all of that information, you move on and hit validate and save. And we can then move to the accounted formation. Okay, so you see I have two accounts. The first is Paul Waters, who is an individual. So we'll take a look at how we would input that data. Okay, again, we have our document reference ID up here. So if we take a look at the screen, it says for individuals, please provide the following. So in this example, we are reporting on behalf of an individual. So we gave him a title, a first name and last name, date of birth, tax residence, and a TIN, a taxpayer identification number. Okay, we gave him an address. Okay, and you'll note anything that has an asterisk beside it, like I've highlighted there, is a mandatory field. Okay, so the minimum amount of information you need to form a valid CRS file is marked by these asterisks. Okay, as we move down the form, we see it says for entities, please provide the following. Okay, but we're not reporting on behalf of an entity. We're reporting on behalf of an individual, and so we skip this. We see it's disabled here. Okay, we also don't add a controlling person in this instance. Okay, and we move on then to the bottom of the form, which captures the financial information pertaining to the account. So the account number, the balance, excuse me, whether it's open or closed, and any payments that should be reported from during the year. Okay. Now, I mentioned earlier that the forms and everything are built to adhere to the standards set out by the OECD. Okay, so it's not just structural kind of standards that they require, it's also business rules. Okay, so if you were to say this account is closed, even though it has 4.8 million, and you were to say that the account type was an IBAN, even though this value here is not in a valid IBAN format, okay, if you were to send that to another jurisdiction, okay, if the competent authority sent that off to Germany in this case, and Germany got this file, Germany would send back what's called a CRS status message to say this particular account listed under this particular document reference ID has the following two errors. Number one, the account type is listed as an IBAN, but it is in fact not an IBAN, and they have indicated the account is closed when it in fact has $4.8 million in it. Okay, so if I try and validate this now, straight away I get a warning on screen telling me that the particular file has these two errors. Okay, so anywhere we can, we have moved these validations to the form so you capture them at the point of data entry rather than engaging in a back and forth between the competent authority of both the Bahamas and the partner jurisdiction trying to fix these things up after the fact. Okay, so close that. We indicate that our account type is just other, and we say our account is not closed. And now when we validate the form, we have no issue. Okay. The next account holder type we're going to take a look at is an entity. And not only is it an entity, it will be an entity with one or more controlling persons. So we see in this case, we didn't input anything for an individual, and when we made a selection here, okay, if I leave this blank, when we make a selection here, the individual information disables. Okay, so you can only enter information for an entity. Okay, our entity name in this case is Barciela Finance. Again, they're tax resident in Germany because we're intending for this to be routed to Germany at the end of everything. We have their entity identification number and their account address. Okay, we also capture the details of the controlling person as well as the controlling person type. Okay, now anywhere you see a drop-down menu, the values in there are directly from the OECD. Okay, so we didn't make these up, or nor did the competent authority ask us to put specific values in there. These are coming directly from the OECD. Okay, so we capture all of that information, and then we see again the bottom of the screen is the same as in the previous example with the account information. Okay, it's worth noting if you had more than one controlling person, you hit the Add Controlling Person button, and a blank controlling person section is generated for you. If you needed another one, you simply hit the button again. Okay, but rather than spend time keying in all that information, let's just stick with the one we had prepared earlier. Okay, likewise for payments, you can add as many payments as are required. Okay, so I hit validate and save here. And then we can move on to the actual submission of this to the competent authority. Okay, so regardless of what screen you're on in the application, okay, right now we've clicked into filing. You can always access the menu and navigate wherever you wish. So right now we see our status here is ready to submit. So we go to our menu, submission, submit filing. Okay, now submission is a two-step process for the manual entry form. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is revalidate all of the data. Okay, so I see here CRS Germany 2017. So I revalidate all of the data to be doubly sure that not only is it structurally correct, but it adheres to the business rules and best practices set out by the OECD. And once all of that validation occurs, we are presented with this screen indicating we can now submit the data. Okay, so we hit submit, and that's it. Our data for our German tax residents has been submitted to the competent authority, who will then transfer that to their counterparts in Germany in September. Okay, now that's the CRS manual filing. Okay, again, if you have any questions, please note them down and we'll handle them all at the end. Okay, I'll pause for a moment to let you guys do that, and then we'll move on to our next scenario, which will be the submission of an XML file. Okay, so we've taken a look at how we can submit a manual entry filing with CRS data. The next thing we're going to do is take a look at the XML. We move down here to our Manage Filings area. Okay, so this is something we didn't cover in the previous example. So how do you create a filing in the first place? So you do that by going Menu, Manage Filings, Create Filing. Okay. Okay. And the first thing we do is we give our filing a name. So let's just call it CRS UK 2017. And we say it's a CRS XML upload filing. And you see there's a number of filing types here. We'll go through all of those as we progress through the session. But for right now, we're just looking at the CRS filings. And let's just say it's for the end of December 2017. Okay. So you give it a name, you select the filing type, and you hit create. Again, you see the little asterisks alongside each field, indicating that they must be completed. Hit create, and we will get a message then directing us to the draft filings area, where our filing will be waiting for us to enter some data. Okay, so as you can now access the filing in the draft filings area. So we move here and here, and we hit draft filings. And we see CRS UK 2017. Now, so I've clicked on the name of the filing, and that brings us into the filing itself. And now you'll see the only options we kind of have here are upload data, okay, or view. Now, view is no good to us really at this point because we have no data in there, so there's nothing to look at. So what we do is we upload data. Where am I on? And that brings us to this page here, where we can browse to the location of the XML file. Okay, so we hit browse, and then you indicate which file you wish to upload. Now, it's worth pointing out at this point that this must be a valid XML file. Okay, and by that I mean it is structurally aligned with the standard set out by the OECD, okay? And it must be in XML format. There is no Excel option here. You must generate a valid XML file, okay? So I know that is a change from your previous year's reporting for FATCA in the Bahamas, but with this solution, it must be a valid XML file. Okay, so we hit open. Okay, once we've located our file, we hit open. And what's happening now is the file is being checked to ensure it is in fact valid against the CRS schema, as it's called, that the OECD have produced. It is being virus scanned. It is being, once those checks have passed, all of the data is input into the database, and all of the validation rules are run to ensure they are all in compliance with what has been set out. And then once all of those checks have passed, the filing will be automatically submitted to the competent authority, okay? So if you have the wherewithal to generate an XML file, what we have just seen there over the course of the last maybe 90 seconds is your filing routine, okay? Now it's worth noting that because these files must be aligned with the CRS schema, you cannot have more than one receiving country listed. And thus, you must submit one XML for each receiving country that you hold taxable, that you hold accounts for. Okay, so if you have accounts for France and Ireland and Germany, you would submit 3 XML files. Okay, so just to make that point. So the last thing we're going to do is to kind of round out the CRS information that we are submitting. Okay, so to let the competent authority know that you have finished your reporting for this year and you've nothing else to report, they have asked that you submit what's called a CRS filing summary. Okay, so we go down again to manage filings, create filing. Okay, and let's just call it filing summary 2017 as our name. And in our filing types here, this is what we're looking at, CRS filing summary. And we give it a period end date of the end of December because that is the date of the accounts that we were reporting on behalf of. Okay. And we hit create once more. Okay, again, we get the screen telling us to go to the draft filings area. So we go menu, draft filings. Okay, and we pick up our filing summary 2017. Now what this is going to show is a list of all of the partner jurisdictions with whom the Bahamas have entered into an exchange agreement. Okay, there'll be one column showing that, and on the other side there will be the number of accounts you have submitted for each of those jurisdictions. Okay, so the idea is that you generate this, you come in here and you click on it, click on CRS filing summary, and then you take a look at this information that's presented to you and ensure it matches everything that you have submitted. Okay, so you take a look here, you say, okay, Bahrain, I have nothing, Colombia, I have nothing, whatever it may be. Okay, you go down through all of these, okay, and you say, oh, UK, I have 3, you know. So I think what's in here now is more than the countries that you guys have an exchange agreement with. So don't be shocked by the size of the table. Okay, it will be smaller in real life. Okay, but you would need to go through and just kind of tally up and make sure that the accounts that are shown here, or the number of accounts that are shown here, do match with what you have submitted and what you believe to be the case. Okay. You then hit validate and save. And then you can submit that to the competent authority. Okay, going through the submit filing. Okay, we see it here. We hit validate and we can submit that then to the guys at the competent authority, and that would end your reporting. Okay, so what we are seeing on screen now is an example of a rule that we have for this particular type of filing. Okay, so to prevent people submitting more than one, or to let them know if they have submitted a filing declaration. Okay, so in my case, I have already submitted one of these the week before last when I was in the Bahamas and performed this same demonstration in person. Okay, but this is a good learning opportunity. Okay, so it doesn't prevent you from submitting anything. It just says you've already submitted a declaration for this period. Your previous declaration will be superseded by this submission, okay, which is fine. Okay, so we go continue to submit. Okay, so to give a bit of context to this, if, for example, previously you thought you had submitted everything, but then on review you found some additional accounts for a new jurisdiction that you hadn't submitted information on previously, you could submit that CRS report and then submit a new declaration indicating that actually, in fact, there is this extra piece. Okay, so that's kind of the scenario we're after going through here. Okay, albeit inadvertently. So we hit submit, and that then will be your CRS filing kind of life cycle. Okay, so we've seen the submission of a manual entry filing, we've seen the submission of an XML filing, and we've seen the submission of your filing summary. Okay, so again, I'll pause now before we move to FATCA and let you gather your thoughts and your questions and note them down, and then we'll move on to FATCA reporting. Okay. So for FATCA, we'll just start at the home page. For FATCA, the forms are largely similar. Okay. The CRS schema was itself based on the original FATCA schema. Okay. Prior to the FATCA schema being updated last year to version 2.0. Okay, so as was the case with CRS, I do have a manual entry form already generated. Okay, so we go draft filings. Okay, and we're going to take a look at FATCA 2017 here. So again, we click on the filing name to open the filing. And we move then to the first thing again is general information. Now here we indicate what type of information we're sending and our message reference. Okay. Okay. If we were submitting a correction, okay, you go corrected data, you could input your previous message reference over there. Okay, but for now, let's just stick with new data. Hit validate and save. And we move on then to the reporting FI information section. Okay, so it's in here that you want to capture the information of the reporting financial institution, or if you are a sponsoring entity, the sponsored and sponsoring entity information. Okay, so again, we have our document type and document reference ID. This will be automatically generated. Okay, so you don't need to worry about it. We have our reporting FI name and taxpayer identification number, as well as the filer category. Okay, we have their address. If it represents a nil return, okay, or a nil report, whatever words you like to use there, you would indicate that here. You would say yes and input the detail, or for the purposes of this demonstration, we'll say no. And if you are a sponsor, this is where you would input your information. So say, is a sponsoring entity applicable? Yes. Okay, so we have all of that information here that you would enter, and your filer category is limited, in this case, to those pertaining to a sponsoring entity. Okay, but again, let's just say no. Okay, so once you've all of that information, you're happy with it all, you go move down to the bottom of the form, hit validate and save. And then we move on to the account information. Okay, so we have Louis Phillips. You click on here, and this will be an example of an individual. Okay, again, we have our document reference ID automatically generated. Our TIN number, in this case, I'm using 9As. So the IRS issued guidance a number of weeks ago, or perhaps months ago at this stage, updating their kind of rules on how to report where you don't have a valid TIN. Okay, so if you don't have access to it, no longer can you use 9 zeros or 9 nines or whatever it was previously. Now it's only 9As. So just to show that that is accepted here. Okay, we have incorporated that guidance from the IRS, and we've updated our rule set to support that. We also capture the details around the person, so Mr. Louis Phillips. We have a date of birth. Okay, again, it says, do not make a selection for account holder type if the account holder or payee is an individual. So we have selected this, and we're saying we're leaving that blank. Okay, we're not an entity, so that's grayed out, and we capture our address here. Okay. Okay, we don't have a substantial owner because we're reporting on behalf of an individual. And then our account information is down here as well. Okay, so we have our account, currency, payment types, all that kind of thing. And again, payment types, this list here comes from, in this case, the IRS, but in the previous case, it would have been the OECD. And the only difference you will notice between them is here it says other FATCA, and on the one you would see in the CRS list, it says other CRS. Okay, but let's just pick any of them. Okay, again, if you had more, you would simply hit add payment record. We validate and save that. And we can move on then to a sample with a controlling person, just to kind of give you an oversight of how that would look. So we have our document type, our docref ID, our TIN this time, and we're saying we're an owner documented FFI with specified US owners. Now we could have others here. We could have passive non-financial entity or any of these, but let's just leave it at that. Entity name, Louis Holdings. We capture our address also. And we have details around our substantial owner type. So what type of owner is it? Is it an organization or an individual? Okay, so this is another difference between FATCA and CRS. When FATCA updated their schema, they brought in this kind of determination between individuals and organizations for substantial owners. So let's just say it's an organization this time. The organization name is Phillips Capital. We have our TIN, we have our address, and the individual detail is grayed out. Okay, and again, the financial information is shown at the bottom here. Okay. We hit validate and save. Okay, and the submission process is the same as we saw for CRS. So we go menu, on here, menu, submission, submit filing. Again, we go here, we validate first to ensure all of the rules set out by the IRS this time are in compliance. In this case, they are. And then we hit submit. Okay, so that goes now to the guys at the competent authority, and they will then pass it on to the IRS. Okay? So that is the manual FATCA filing. Okay? If you'd like to take note of your questions for a moment, I'll move on to the XML very shortly. Okay, so XML filings for FATCA. First thing we're going to do is go Manage Filings, Create Filing. FATCA 2017. And okay, worth noting as well, pointing this out in case anyone were to get caught out. When you load this page, you do not see the FATCA filings. Okay, do not panic, do not worry, just scroll down and you'll see both of them there. Okay, the list is presented in alphabetical order, and so the US FATCA filings have snuck down to the bottom here. Okay. Again, we'll give a name, type, and a date. Hit create. And again, we go to our draft filings area to pick this up. Draft filings. And we see FATCA 2017B. Okay, and the process will be the exact same. You click on the filing name, click on Upload Data, browse, and then upload your XML file. Okay, and that XML file will be again virus scanned. It will be checked against the FATCA schema that has been defined by the IRS. Once more, it must be an XML file and not an Excel file. And once all of those checks have passed, we would again run it through our suite of validations to ensure there's no back and forth with the IRS on any kind of formatting issues or anything like that. And then it gets submitted automatically to the competent authority. Okay. So let's cancel that. Okay. And we go home, and we can move on now to our user management section. Okay. So the first thing you can do as a primary user, okay, or the first thing that it's recommended that you do as a primary user is to create what we've called a secondary user on the system. Okay. So someone to cover for you while you're out of the office, or someone to assist you with creating the filings or inputting data or anything at all, okay? It's never bad to have an extra set of hands, okay? So to do that, you go to Menu, Manage Users, okay? Now you have two options, to create a user or to view and edit existing users for the particular entity you're acting on behalf of. But today, let's go to Create User. Okay. And you're presented with this screen where you give their first name. So let's just say it's Mary Jones, and that's Mary at nassaubank.com. And you can give her a phone number also. Okay, and you're going to say she's a secondary user. All right. Once you're happy that the information you've put in is correct, okay, hit create. And Mary, in this case, will get an email saying, welcome to the portal. You have been created as a user for Nassau Bank. And here is how you log in for the first time, and as well as a link to the login page. Okay, and it's as easy as that. Okay, if Mary were to leave your organization, okay, you could go edit, and mark her as inactive. Okay, just like that. And that would remove all of her permissions, and she would no longer be able to log in. Okay? But for this demo, let's just say we'll leave her as she is. Okay? You may have noticed that there is no option here for a primary user. Okay? In order to update your primary user, so say the primary user at your organization has been promoted, okay, and they are no longer responsible for managing this particular task, or maybe they have moved departments, or maybe they've moved on entirely, okay? But someone needs to be the primary user, okay? So rather than you having to reach out to the competent authority, okay, and asking them and getting them involved to update the user for you, okay, you can do that yourself, okay? So what we're going to take a look at in our draft filings area is a change of primary user notice. Okay, so here we have update primary user. We click on here. And what this form shows us is the details of the existing primary user and the details of the new primary user. Okay, so we see here the existing primary user information is myself, Louis Phillips. And the new primary user is this guy here, John Jones, john@nassaubank.com. Again, you confirm the email address to make sure there's no typos there. What his position is and his contact details, as well as a letter authorizing the change in primary user. So just explaining that Louis in this case has moved on and John is taking over. Okay. You validate and save that. And then you would submit that using the same submit filing menu, submission, submit filing. Okay, you would come in here, you would validate it. Now what you're validating here is that the detail of the existing primary user, okay, so if you've made a typo in the email address of the primary user, you will get an error here saying that the user that you have listed actually, in fact, is not a primary user for this particular entity. Okay, so the details you enter must be correct, otherwise you won't be able to submit this request to the competent authority. Okay, so we validate it. And you can then submit that to the competent authority where they will take action on it. Okay, I'm not going to do that today. Okay, in case somebody is too eager and they approve it and I lose my access while I'm doing this webinar. So let's just go back to our home screen. Okay, and I'll let you take a moment to note down any details around the user management and any questions you have. And then we'll move on to the last section of this webinar, or the second last, I should say, which is the financial institution management. Okay, so we're going to take a look at how you can update your reporting obligations. So perhaps you never had any accounts other than US accounts and Bahamian accounts, and all of a sudden you take on a client from Ireland and you need to make a CRS declaration for Ireland. Okay, so how can you change your obligations from FATCA only to FATCA and CRS now? So we'll take a look at that. And we'll also take a look at how you can update some of the details around your financial institution, such as your address and that kind of thing. Okay, and we'll move on then to the Q&A. I've seen my chat is kind of on fire over here with questions coming in, so we'll get to all of those and answer them as best we can, and go back over any scenarios that you request then at that point. So we move, once again, I have some of these already created, okay? So we go draft filings. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is take a look at updating our obligations. Okay. So we go click here, click on our change of reporting obligations piece, and we say, oh, what reporting do we want to do now? Well, we did FATCA and CRS, but maybe I don't have any, maybe all of my CRS accounts, they closed out this year, so from now on I'm only doing FATCA. Okay. You could change your entity type if you wanted. If you had never been in scope for FATCA, okay, but now have taken on some business which moves you into that bracket, or which now places a reporting obligation for FATCA upon you, you could say, okay, on FATCA, on CRS and FATCA now, and here is my GIN. So we do allow you to enter your GIN at this point as well, okay, and you can capture your fiscal year end here also. Okay, so any of these details you need to update, you create a change of reporting obligations form, you validate and save them, and we move to submission, submit filing, we have update obligations here. Let's validate that. And we hit submit. Okay, so what's being checked during that particular validation are things like if you have indicated your reporting for FATCA, that you have a GIN listed on the form, and that GIN is valid. Okay. So we move on now to updating some details about our institution. So perhaps you made a typo in your address. Okay. Something along those, something as trivial as that. Okay. We go here. We create what's called change of financial institution information form. Okay, and on this, we can capture our entity type and our GIN. So if perhaps you made a mistake in your GIN or your entity type selection, you can edit them here also, and your entity address, okay, as well as an email. And if there is any supporting documentation available for any of these changes, you are able to upload it here, but it is not a mandatory requirement. Okay, it doesn't have a little asterisk here beside the browse button, so it's not mandatory to do it. But if you wanted to, you could click browse and update whatever it may be. Okay, update FI details. Okay, hit validate and save once those items have been done, and then again submission, submit filing. Okay. I'm conscious this is a bit repetitious, but this is the last thing we're going to submit. And then I'll take a break and catch up on your questions, and then I will answer all of those as best I can. Okay? So we have change of address. We hit validate. And we hit submit. Okay. So that brings us to the end of the demonstration of the kind of main functions that you guys will be using. Okay. So if you bear with me, I'm probably going to take maybe 1 minute to 90 seconds now to read through the questions that have come in, and then I will address them for you. Okay. But what I will say is that the only questions I can answer are those related to specific portal functionalities, rather than maybe technical scenarios that you may encounter with regards to your own book of accounts and how they should be reported. Okay, so this isn't a Q&A on reporting guidance per se, it's how to use the portal. Okay, so is nil reporting mandatory is the first question. As far as I am aware, if this pertains to CRS, you would need to direct that to the competent authority. Okay. As far as I am aware, it is not, but again, you would need to validate that with the competent authority. If it pertains to FATCA, again, that will be one for them. Okay. How do we report account holders of trusts? Or could you or the guide give specific guidance on reporting account holders under trusts? Other portal guidance notes give some guidance on what to do for trusts. So again, this, I'm not sure what advice to offer here other than to contact the competent authority, and if there is specific items that lack clarity in the guidance notes or regulations that have been produced for the Bahamas, I suggest sending that feedback to the competent authority, and perhaps they can offer some clarity on how exactly you should report them.
Louis?
Yeah.
I will interject here just to remind the participants that that this training is just focused, as you mentioned, on the VISA reporting functions. And there will be a further session arranged over the next week or so regarding the guidance notes and reporting obligations. But we advise all participants to refer to the guidance notes, the CRS and FATCA, that is on the Tax Exchange website, www.taxreporting.finance.gov.bs. So again, please restrict your questions to the functionality of the VISA tax software.
Okay. Okay. So with that in mind, I'll skip the questions that are directly related to the competent authority. Andrew, I will relay those to you after this webinar, so you can pick them up.
Fine.
Okay. Can we provide a link to the portal? Yes, there will be a link to the portal once it goes live. and that will be on that tax reporting website that Andrew just mentioned.
It's in the user guide presently. That's posted on the website, and it will be functional once the portal goes live.
Mm-hmm. Also, a valid XML sample for CRS. I'm sure we can arrange that to be posted. What do service providers, such as attorneys doing real estate transactions, who do not provide clients with account numbers, put in the account number field, which appears mandatory?
Again, Louis, you can pass that question.
Okay.
The person there would have to refer to the guidance notes.
Okay.
Louis, have you seen the question? There's one regarding the functionality. Is the second user allowed to be added as primary user when the primary user leaves? You see that?
I haven't got that far down yet, but the answer is yes. If you put the new in the section under new details for the primary use for the new user that you're adding, you can use the existing secondary user, and in that case their secondary user access will be removed, and they will be promoted, for want of a better word, to primary user. Okay. We have a question here. I am a fiduciary with hundreds of entities to report. Can I draft one letter with names of all entities and upload the same letter to each one when we register? So for your specific scenario, okay, or anyone else on the line who has hundreds of entities to report on behalf of, the competent authority have what we call like a bulk registration facility available. So if you contact them on either of the web addresses shown here on screen, so information@taxreporting.finance.gov.bs or helpdesk@taxreporting.finance.gov.bs, they can liaise with you on that and work with you to get all of those entities registered kind of in the one go, rather than having you fill out 100 registration forms. Okay, could you confirm that the portal will not mandate trustee documented trusts to have its own GINs, as true sponsored entities are? Our trustee documented trusts will be reported under our sponsoring entity GIN. Again, that's one for the competent authority. Okay. Could you demonstrate voids and/or corrected filings? Okay, yes, we can do that. If you don't mind, I won't do that right this second. I'll get through to the end of the questions and then I will come back to that piece. How can we create a draft manually? Okay, so when you create a filing, it automatically moves to the draft filings area. Okay, so I'll take my time when we're doing the correction, as has been requested in another question, and that should clear up how things end up in the drafts. Okay. Within submission filing, if we have 11 from the same participating jurisdiction and we upload 10 at once and update one later, will it get refreshed 10 to 1 or make the total 11? So if you can submit as many new filings as you like, okay? All of the data gets consolidated prior to export. So please do not submit duplicated accounts, okay? If you submit one filing with 10 accounts and another filing with 11, 10 being the same as was previously reported, what's going to go to whichever jurisdiction is 21 accounts, okay? So if you have omitted a particular account, what you need to do in that situation is just submit something with one account, with the one that you've missed out, and new data with one additional account. Okay, it'll all be consolidated on the way out anyway. Okay. When does this portal become accessible and usable? It will be accessible and usable in the coming days. Is the second user allowed to be added as a primary user when the primary user leaves, or do you have to remove him or her as second user first? So this was a question that Andrew called out a few moments ago, and the answer is you don't need to do anything other than list that user in the new user section, and the software will remove the secondary permission automatically and promote that user to primary. Based on, would you get an error if uploading an XML with an incorrect TIN number? Unclear here if this is for FATCA or CRS. Okay, for CRS, okay, I'll go through the various scenarios. Okay, so for CRS, the account holder TIN number there is no particular validation rule around that. Okay, and if you are transmitting, or if you're uploading something on behalf or to a jurisdiction that has a defined format for their TIN, they must enter into agreement with the Bahamas prior to the kind of sending of this data to say, please, Bahamas, we would like that all TIN numbers are in a specific format, and the Bahamas must agree to that. Okay, so there's like a bilateral agreement between the jurisdiction you're sending the information to and the Bahamas to say that TIN numbers must be in a specific format for that specific jurisdiction. To date, no such agreements are in place, and therefore there are no such restrictions on the CRS forms for the account holder or controlling person TIN numbers. For account holders in FATCA, the standard IRS validations are in place, and if you try and submit something that contravenes those validations, you won't be able to. You'll be presented with a message on screen to say that your TIN number is not valid. And for the reporting financial institution TIN numbers, they must be a valid GIN, okay, and more so they must match up with the GIN at the start of your Docker FIDs. So we do have all of the TIN validations in place across both reporting regimes, and if you contravene those rules, you will be prevented from submitting your filing to the competent authority. Okay, so good morning. I have two questions. We enrolled on Friday and did not receive the approval yet. How many days does this process take? Where to find the XML? And a separate question, where can we find the XML schema? So I'm not sure how you got in on Friday. We were still in the process of getting things set up, and there was no official notice posted to say that the portal was live. Okay. However, the process is fairly instantaneous. Okay. And I would advise you, in your particular case, this person who managed to get in on Friday while we were still trying to move to the production environment, to contact the competent authority with your details to ensure how best to move forward for you, because you shouldn't have been able to get in on Friday. As to where to find the XML schema for CRS, that is posted on the OECD's website. If you go to oecd.org, and there's a section there called topics or something, if you click in tax, you'll see a common reporting standard in there, and they have a user guide and a sample of the schema. Okay, we have a person here who has found out about the webinar through a colleague, and can they please add the email address to future notifications? So, Andrew, I'll forward that to you. And he also says they were unable to hear. Okay, so sorry about that. Another question here. Can we set up more than one secondary user as well? The answer is yes, you can. Okay. You can have as many secondary users as are required for your specific needs. Can a sample file format also be provided for FATCA? Okay, so the IRS are a little bit better than the OECD in this regard, and they have a number of samples already set out on their website. Okay, so we can, and I think there's a link to that as well in the user guide. Okay, so that's where you will go to pick up your FATCA samples. Okay, all right. So that's the end of the questions. Okay, there's another one here saying, can we update the tax reporting site? As I alluded to there with the person getting in early on Friday, we are in the process of pushing this to the production environment, and all of the language and whatnot on the tax reporting site is being updated presently, and will reflect the current reporting deadlines and timelines in due course once we push this portal to the production environment. Okay, so another question. Should we wait until the portal is open before we register? Yes. Please do wait until an official communique has come from the competent authority before registering. What will happen, new question, what will happen if we put more than one receiving country in the same CRS XML file? For example, all European countries together. If you do that, your file will not be uploaded. You will get an error because you would have because it will fail the schema validation. So if you put more than one receiving country in there, it'll break down. Okay, the OECD have indicated you should not have more than one receiving country, and therefore the file itself will be structurally invalid and break down. Okay. Is it possible to submit a test CRS XML reporting code, or is the portal only usable for final reporting? So new question, user asking if they can use test codes in the portal. The answer is no. In production, you can only use the production ones, so the OECD 1, OECD 2, OECD 3 for those particular codes. So that's that. Okay, so I'll pause for a moment before going back to do the correction. Okay, just to let you guys get any other questions in here. So for the correction, we're going to use CRS, and I'll take a bit more care when explaining how something moves from nowhere, I guess, to the draft filings area. Okay. Okay. So, how we do a correction. Okay. So the first thing, so if we think about this, why would you need to do a correction? Okay, so you've sent some information to, in the example we're going to use, let's say it's Germany. And Germany have come back to say that you have sent us some information that we're not happy with. Perhaps your IBAN isn't a valid IBAN, or whatever it may be, okay? So now just actually to preface this whole thing, I'm not sure how many people on the line have seen the user guide published by the OECD, or the status message user guide, which details all of the checks that they are looking for, what your partner jurisdictions are looking for. But we have a suite of validations. There's over 60 or 70 validation rules that check every single piece of data you're entering, okay? So that when you submit it, okay, everything gets checked prior to going to the competent authority, okay? And what that does is it captures everything at source, okay? So any particular issue you have will be presented to you before it gets to the competent authority, and so before it gets to the partner jurisdiction. That means that you should not be getting any of these issues. Okay, you shouldn't need to do any corrections, okay, that aren't triggered of your own volition. You should not be getting any error messages back from your partner jurisdictions, okay, unless they have gone rogue, okay, and are checking some validations. Perhaps that example of the tin that was mentioned earlier, perhaps they're checking account number tins without prior consent from the Bahamas, okay? That's the kind of only example that we can think of, or the only example that we've witnessed of these record errors being shown, okay? So just to preface this sample with that piece of information to give you a bit of comfort, okay? But nonetheless, let's proceed. When your filing is transmitted, okay, so when the competent authority move your filing along to the partner jurisdiction by the end of September, okay, your partner jurisdiction is going to open up the filing, is going to take a look at it, and they're going to send a CRS status message back. And that status message is going to say, thank you very much, or thank you, but this particular record with this particular document reference ID had this particular error, okay? And that will be displayed to you, okay? When that happens, you, as a user, will get an email saying that your filing has been updated and asking you to log in and check it out. And the way we do that is we go to our submission history area, okay? While we're doing this, another question has come in a few moments ago, asking if it's recommended to use the company name in the filing summary, the name that you give your filing summary, so that it's easily identifiable. And you can. There's certainly no harm in it, but on the other side of this, in the portal that the guys at the competent authority use, the company name is always shown alongside the filing name, so they can identify it anyway. Okay, so if you do, no harm. If you don't, also no harm. Okay, so it's up to you. Okay. So submission history. Where is everything we have submitted? Okay. Well, now we're showing filings that were for the reporting year 2018. So we go 2017, and it will show us everything that we have submitted. See, we've lots here. Okay, so we have here CRS Germany. Now, this field, transmission progress. You see here it says waiting. What that indicates is it's waiting to be transmitted to Germany, okay, because we haven't completed the entire life cycle during this webinar. We haven't processed a status message from Germany. If Germany had responded, this would either say received, or it would say record error, okay? So for the purposes of this, let us pretend it says record error. Okay, now in order for you to see what that error is, you click on the filing name. and then you go view comments. Okay, so what we do is your partner jurisdiction will send back a file that will detail what the issue is. And we will extract the information that relates to your specific filing and post it here as a comment. Okay, so you will see the document reference ID, the error code, where in the filing your error is, and the suggested course of action, okay, as provided by the partner jurisdiction. Okay, the OECD have a specific format for these messages that mentions what the items I have just said, okay, but you are at the mercy of the people generating this on the other side as to how useful they may be, okay. So let us pretend this says your reporting FI is not from the Bahamas or something like that, okay. So what do we need to do? So the first thing we do is go back. And if we're saying our section is, we're saying our issue is in the reporting FI information section, we need to click in here, okay, and we're going to need to take our document reference ID. Okay, so we copy this. Now this is important because when you are submitting a correction, you will be required to enter what's called a corresponding document reference ID, okay, which references the particular section of the previously submitted filing that an error was found in. Okay, so we copy that, copy, and now we move over. Where am I going? Hang on, 1 second. Give me 1 second. Now, so we go back. And we go manage filings, create filing. And let's just call this CRS Germany correction. CRS manual entry filing, end of December 2017. Okay. We hit, now at this point, okay, so at this, there is nothing in our draft filings area, okay, for CRS filings. When we hit create, what happens is an instance of this filing is created within the portal, okay, and how you access that is from the draft filings area. Okay, so that's to address the question around how to create a manual draft that was raised earlier. Okay, so it says your filing named CRS Germany correction has been successfully created with the reference CRS 00135. You can now access the filing in the draft filings area. So we go menu, draft filings. And we see here CRS Germany correction. Okay, I click in here. And then the first thing I'm going to do is go to the general information section and indicate that I am submitting a correction rather than new data. And I'll also select my receiving country. So let's go Germany. Okay, now this list will be restricted to those countries with whom the Bahamas have an exchange agreement with. Okay, so we say it's Germany. And we're not submitting new data, we're saying it contains corrections for previously sent information. Okay, so hit validate and save. And then we move on. So in order to add a CRS report, okay, so right now we don't have anything. We click this Add Instance button. Click, and we see here, we have our reporting FI information and our account information. So we click Reporting FI information. And our document type is going to be corrected. Okay. And we see here, we have a space to input our changed. It says, if this data represents a change to previously submitted data, please enter the corresponding document reference ID here. And your corresponding document reference ID is the document reference of the file you have previously submitted. So we go paste what we copied from the submission history area in here. Okay, we leave this alone because this is automatically generated to be unique and in line with the standards set out. And let's just say we're setting this as Bahamas. Okay, and our address is the Bahamas. Okay, and then we validate and save that. Okay, so that's just for argument, for the purposes of the demonstration, we have input the corrected information. Okay, and you can now then go menu, submission, submit filing, and you will be able to validate that and submit it. Okay, so that is the process for a correction.
Thank you, Louis. We'll take that as our final question. Is there anything in addition you want to add at this point, Louis, before we close?
No, nothing from me. Just one last question came in here, Andrew, saying we suggest that the portal guide authors work with the competent authority to show XML samples and manual filings for different scenarios. For example, trustees, and that this can be in the portal guide rather than for each case referring to the competent authority. As stated, we viewed portal guidance from various countries, and they mentioned trust treatment, especially useful since the Bahamas has many trustees. It would reduce the emails and questions going forward to finance. Okay, so just on this, and in addition to what Andrew had just posted there, as it stands, we don't know all of the scenarios that you guys are encountering. Okay, so for day one, we don't have a bank of these scenarios, and so we cannot present how best they should be reported. It's only through your feedback and you raising questions with the competent authority, okay, and then researching the answer and working with ourselves, your advisor, to provide screenshots and as to how best to fulfill that guidance that the competent authority come up with. That's kind of the only way we can update the user guide. Okay, so while I appreciate day one, it may be a challenge. If you do work with us and send your feedback around the specific scenarios that you want to see addressed in the user guide, we can certainly work from Visor's side. We can certainly work with the competent authority on that.
Thanks, Louis. On behalf of the Bahamas Competent Authority, thank you all for participating in the training today. Please review the user manual that's posted on the Tax Information Exchange website, and we look forward to a successful reporting season. Thank you.